I feel like I never really set out to be a musician or a composer for that matter. So I don't know. I was trying to think about that a little bit and think back to what those early memories were like, and I got my start kind of by accident, playing drums. And so performer first, composer second, and so I was a history buff. My mom is too, and we went to a French and Indian War reenactment when I was 10 or 9 or something, 9 or 10, and so we left that and we were like, oh, maybe we should start doing this, and so at that time in the French and Indian War, kids could join the army.
Yeah.
They would be flag bearers, fife players, or drummers, and the drummer was an important person on the battlefield. They played commands, So we had a friend in the group. We talked to him about joining, and they said, "Oh, well, we really need drummers and fife players." This was like September, probably at this point, So I went to the band director at school, 5th grade. Said, "Hey, I want to play the drums." And the first thing he says is, "Well, where were you for instrument tryouts in May?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, well, here's what happened, and da 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 da," and so he said, "Well, I already have too many drummers." And long story short, he said, "If you practice real hard and you're serious about it, then we'll give it a shot."
So your entry into music wasn't like, I'm going to join the band. It was, I'm doing this reenactment, and then you went to join the band.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, it's like I didn't wake up one day and think, oh, I'm going to join the band. I want to play the drums. It wasn't like that for me.
Did composing grow out of that organically, or is it something that you really kind of had to think about before you started?
Again, kind of with getting into playing the drums, composing for me, I kind of felt like was a bit of a happenstance. I didn't start composing until I was well into my undergrad. In my undergrad's in music ed, I had some free time and I thought, oh, it might be fun to see if I can make a composition, see if I can write something. And then I did, and that was kind of like, oh, that was cool, and I kind of dabbled in that a little bit. And then as I did it for a year or two and just kind of casually doing it on the side, I thought like maybe I want to pursue this a little more seriously. So it always kind of felt secondary to my percussion playing. I think probably just because of the late start that I had. And, I had percussion lessons as part of my curriculum, but I was studying composition on the side with the music theory professor at my undergrad. So I wasn't as invested as I was with percussion, and of course with the length of time I'd been studying as well. So
yeah, I want to back up a little bit and talk about your influences as a drummer and your trajectory as a drummer, because there's a pretty big difference in what you do now and like war reenactment drumming.
Of course.
What were some of your early musical interests in terms of drummers mostly, and how do those interests inform the music that you maybe composed in undergrad, but also the music you make today?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I still think those things, they seem disparate, they kind of seem unrelated, but I do think they're quite linked. After I got into the French and Indian War group and all that stuff in the school band, playing music to me felt like one of the first things I felt like I was good at. I'd played sports growing up, and I've got 3 older siblings. I followed in their footsteps. They were playing sports, so that's what I was doing naturally. And I enjoyed playing. I didn't love it, and I didn't love the practice. I didn't want to run laps just to play soccer on the weekends. It wasn't really my cup of tea. So as much as I enjoyed sports, it was just fun for me. It wasn't something I really wanted to get serious about. And a few years into drumming, it was like, oh, this feels like it's a lot better fit for me. I love to play and that sort of thing. So by that time, I'm like in middle school or something, and discovering bands like Led Zeppelin and that sort of thing, Pink Floyd and that stuff. And I used to come home and watch Led Zeppelin. I bought a Led Zeppelin DVD, live DVD. This was pre-internet pretty much, or
Yeah,
early
right.
internet, you know.
Is that How the West Was Won? Is it that
It's
one?
what it was,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that one. I think I have that somewhere.
And I'd come home from school, watch it every day, you know, almost every day. And then go practice and try to emulate what was happening, you know. Almost like a bare bones form of transcription. You know, I wasn't writing anything out. I was just emulating, imitating, you know. Then I kind of moved into emo and hardcore and screamo and stuff. And that was really, I think at that time, like in the early 2000s, that music was really coming to fruition, you know. So, yeah, I just started playing more of that, you know. And I grew up like on punk and skateboarding and snowboarding and that kind of stuff, you know. And so I was always interested in that kind of like anti-authoritarian attitude or
Yeah.
whatever, you know, or outsider viewpoint or whatever you want to say, you know. And so got into screamo and stuff like that. And then I wanted stuff that was harder and farther out, you know, and outside the box and that sort of thing. So, you know, as emo got popular, I moved on to screamo. As screamo got popular, I moved on to like hardcore and not super crazy metal, you know.
Yeah, right.
And then eventually I end up like in black metal and death metal and grindcore and stuff, you know. And by the time I was in high school, I was playing in a deathcore band, which was fun, you know, and it was cool. And it was kind of the formative years for me, of playing with chops, but playing with precision, you know, and taste. And my favorite metal drummers had taste because there was so much of that music going on at that point that like anyone could just blow chops, you know, playing fast, playing blast beats. That felt to me like something that almost anyone could do. It was just you work hard to get the muscles there, you know, and you can do it. But my favorite drummers had taste. They knew what fill to play when or how to complement a certain riff, even in this really aggressive style that was fast or very choppy.
It's interesting hearing you talk about it because when we met in 2013, you know, and having followed your path since then, you know, you're talking about you'll get into something and then it will gain popularity and you're like, well, I need to find something a little more on the fringe of that. And then it's an ongoing quest almost. And I've seen that with what you do since I've known you. I mean, really, with composing, playing, everything you do. Do you find that's am I making an accurate assessment?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think at that time it was much more of a conscious decision in terms of like, you know, wow, this stuff's really getting more popular, you know. And when you're 13, that stuff, it's different.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
you're in middle
Yeah.
school and whatever, you're looking for your identity and all that stuff. But yeah, I certainly feel like that still happens where I'm always kind of looking for like the next thing. Where do I go from here? Where are things going from here? What's the next step for me?
Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Kline, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.